Okay, I'd like to call the Comox Valley Regional District Board meeting of Tuesday, March 16th to order. In the boardroom, the directors we have are Director Hamir, Arbor, Grieve, and Grant, and online, Director Swift, Moran, Cole Hamilton, Hillian, and McCollum. I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. And I'm going to read Article 28 of UNDRIP today. Indigenous peoples have the right to redress by means that can include restitution or, when it is not possible, just, fair, and equitable compensation for the lands, territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned or otherwise occupied or used, and which have been confiscated, taken, occupied, used, or damaged without their free, prior, and informed consent. Unless otherwise freely agreed upon by the peoples concerned, compensation shall take the form of lands, territories, and resources equal in quality, size, and legal status, or of monetary compensation or other appropriate redress. And with that, we'll move to item B, which is the in-camera motion.
Move in camera.
Thank you, Cole Hamilton and Grieve. And that will be going in camera according to Community Charter sections 91C and 91G. And is there anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that is carried. We move on to adoption of minutes.
Move minutes. Second.
Thank you. That's Hamir and Grieve, and those are the minutes, the regular board minutes from March 9th. Is there anyone opposed to adoption of those minutes? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. Next, we have reports. The first report is Black Creek Oyster Bay Service Committee from March 8th minutes.
Second.
Hamir and Grieve, thank you. And this is a vote of the full board. Anyone opposed to those minutes? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. We're on to item 2, Electoral Area Service Committee minutes from March 8th.
Proceed.
Thank you.
Second.
Hamir and Cole Hamilton. And again, a vote of the full board. Anyone opposed to receipt of those minutes? Hearing and seeing none, that is carried. And there's a recommendation.
Move one.
Director Grieve and can I get Hamir? Thank
Second.
you. It's such a divide online and in the boardroom tonight. It's a little bit challenging. Okay, so that recommendation is regarding the approval of development variance permit for Hector Road. And it's a vote of the areas. Is there anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that is carried. And we're on to recommendation 2.
Move 2.
Hamir and Grieve, thank you. So recommendation 2 is the board supporting the use of $36,000 for function 295 animal control. And further, also monies toward unsightly premises. It's a vote of the areas. Any further discussion? And anyone opposed? And that's carried unanimously. We're on to recommendation 3. Thank you, Hamir and Arbor. And recommendation 3 is around service function 270. I think in the electoral area service committee meeting, it was referenced as 271, and there's a little note about the change to that recommendation. Any further discussion? And about the areas, anyone opposed? And that's carried. On to recommendation 4.
Move recommendation 4.
Second.
Grieve and McCollum, thank you. Recommendation 4 is around the Safe Restart Grant. It's a vote of the full board. Any further discussion? And is there anyone opposed? And that is carried. So we're on to recommendation 5.
Second.
Amir and Grieve, thank you. And this is regarding the AAP for rural roadside collection. It's a vote of the full board. Any further discussion? And is there anyone opposed? And that's carried unanimously.
Wow.
We're on to recommendation 6.
Second.
Arbor and Hillian. Okay, and this one is regarding Denman Housing Association and Denman Green Project. It's a vote of the full board. Is there any further discussion? And is there anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried unanimously. We're on to item 3, the Comox Valley Sewer Commission minutes from March 9th.
Move receipt.
Second.
Hillian and Grant, thank you. And it's a vote of the full board. Is there anyone opposed to receipt of those minutes? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. There's a recommendation.
Second.
Grant and McCullum, thank you. Recommendation 1 has to do with forwarding information to the inspector of municipalities around sewer conveyance project bylaw. And it's a vote of Courtney and Comox. Is there any further discussion? And is there anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, carried unanimously. We're on to recommendation 2.
Move to.
Second.
Thank you, Grant and Hillian. Again, this is regarding sewer system conveyance project loan authorization bylaw 647 and the AAP.
Yep.
Is there any further discussion? And this is a vote of Courtney Comox again. Is anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that is carried unanimously. We're on to recommendation 4. Oh, is that right? Yes. Comox Valley Water Committee minutes from March 9th.
Move receipt.
Grant and McCullum, thank you. It's a vote of the full board. Anyone opposed to receipt of Water Committee minutes? And that's carried unanimously. We're on to item 5, Comox Valley Recreation Committee minutes from March 9th.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you. Cole, Hamilton, and Moran. And that's a vote of full board. Anyone opposed to receipt of Recreation Commission minutes? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried unanimously. And we're on to item 6, Rural Roadside Collection, the Spring 2021 Alternative Approval Process.
Second.
Thank you, Grant and Grieve, and I'll pass it to staff.
Thank you very much, Chair and Directors. James Warren, the Deputy CAO, is here to explain this report and the process that is proposed and answer any of your questions.
Thank you, directors, and good afternoon. So this report presented today, it provides an update on the Rural Roadside Collection Services program proposal that has been in front of the Electoral Area Services Committee now since the fall. The report introduces bringing forward electoral approval for the proposed service in the springtime singular AAP, which is being proposed, and would bring together a number of assent processes at that one time to occur. The response period will occur in June. The nature of this program in particular is proposing that 3 new services would be established for a rural roadside garbage and recycling collection program. This is based on extensive consultation conducted over the fall and staff reports in November of last year and February of this year, as well as a discussion at the Electoral Area Services Committee just last week on March 8th. There was interest in the directors at that point in bringing forward the AAP in a more timely fashion, recognizing that there's some synergies that could exist. And so staff have taken taken some time to look at the potential for that and recognize that there's substantive information, there's a robust information campaign that we're proposing, and we would be recommending that the board move forward with these bylaws at this time. Should the board support this process, then the information campaign would be launched in mid-April with letters direct mailed to all the residents, all the homeowners in that proposed service area, or sorry, the 3 proposed service areas. The information campaign will speak about costs, the range of costs, exemptions to the service, and other details around the rollout. And I guess, yeah, that I would be open to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, James. Are there any questions? Director Hamir?
I think it's Director Grieve.
Oh, sorry, Director Grieve.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, James, for bringing this forward and expediting the AAP on it. I do believe that the general public has grown more used to recycling than it once was. At one point, we tried to bring this forward about 8 years ago, and it failed in referendum. But now with all the new regulations around landfills, we realize how expensive it is, especially when it's being filled up with stuff that we have markets for recycling wise. So I think this is welcome in the community, and I look forward to the AAP, and I certainly hope the people support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Hamir?
I was going to say very similar. I just want to thank staff for expediting this so quickly. I mean, we literally met last week at electoral areas, and this wasn't going to happen until much later in the year. And I think the feedback that the electoral area directors are getting from constituents is that they're growing impatient, that they're actually expecting this to be happening sooner than later. So I just want to thank staff for being able to really put this through thoughtfully. I see, the 3 areas as a really positive way of moving forward, and just look forward to hearing, the comments from the public. I think it'll be quite favorable, and looking forward to starting this service.
Great, thank you. Director Arbor?
Thanks. All the rural directors will chime in because that's a very important one for us. I think as local government, we always have to be cautious when we utilize the AAP process. I know when I was part of the general public, I always raised an eyebrow when it was hitting the street. But in this case, we've outreached to close to I think over 4,000 responses, showing about over 70% support across the rural area in the survey we did last summer. So I think that it is appropriate to use a vehicle that's a little bit easier with the AAP, and I think the residents of Area A are looking forward to see this, and I encourage those who don't support it to also file their form and send it to the regional district. Thanks.
Thank you. So are we on receipt? Okay, is there anyone opposed to receipt? That's a vote of the areas. And that's carried, and we're on to recommendation 1.
Move the recommendation, please.
Thank you, Director Grieve and Hamir. And again, it's the vote of the areas. Is there anyone opposed to recommendation 1? Forwarding the 3 bylaws to the Inspector of Municipalities. No opposition. Okay, and that is carried unanimously. So we'll go on to recommendation 2. Director Arbor and Hamir. Any further discussion? And is there anyone opposed to recommendation 2? Again, it's below the areas. And there are none, so that is carried. Thank you very much. We are on to item 7, the 2021-2025 financial plan. Capital
Move receipt.
Second.
Hillian and Grant, thank you.
And Madam Chair and
I'll
Directors.
talk to staff, yep.
Kevin DeVal is here, Manager of Finance, to provide a summary of the report and where we are at with respect to the budget and financial plan, and answer any of your questions.
Thank you very much. Through the chair to the directors, good afternoon. So the staff report and financial planning bylaw in front of you this afternoon represents the culmination of the presentation of the 98 individual detailed service budgets that took place over the past 7 weeks that began back on January 25th. And in fact, the CBRD undertook an extensive and likely unprecedented budget process over this past year, commencing with our response to the COVID-19 pandemic, which led to the creation and implementation of the Rethink Comox Valley Service Review back in the summer of 2020. This was subsequently followed by our normal annual financial planning process, which kicked off in September and continued well into January 21 in advance of the public presentations, with the Rethink Comox Valley lens and board strategic drivers being core focuses in building those budgets. As the formal authority and approval of the service operational budgets and capital expenditures for the next 5 years, the financial planning bylaw incorporates the feedback and endorsements provided by the directors over the course of the proposed budget deliberations and is now presented as the recommended financial plan for 21-25 for your consideration and first, second, and third reading of the bylaw today. Final reading and adoption is then scheduled for Tuesday, March 30th, just ahead of the legislated deadline of March 31st. Some key highlights of the recommended 21-25 financial plan include a total consolidated budget for 2021 of $148.5 million compared to $180.1 million in 2020. That's broken down to $76 million for the operating budget and $72.5 million for the capital budget. And within that capital budget, two significant projects worth of note. Firstly, includes the nearing completion of the $126 million water treatment plant later on this year. And it also includes the first steps towards our planned $73 million sewer conveyance upgrades. Overall, year-over-year net decrease in tax requisitions are planned of $226,708 or 0.64% from 2020. The tax requisition total in 2021 is $35.46 million. Versus $35.69 million in 2020. Other highlights within the financial plan include $1 million reduction in the tax requisition for the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service from $6 million to $5 million, and that is anticipated to be held across the 5-year financial plan. We've also allocated 95% of the $723,000 in COVID-19 pandemic response BC Safe Restart grant funding. And that was dispersed as follows. Firstly, $200,000 to Service 270, Comox Valley Emergency Program, for emergency operations preparedness and community support. That was further broken down into providing $100,000 for community partnerships and vulnerable response through the EOC, and also $100,000 for the Emergency Operations Center technology and system upgrades. A further $100,000 is being provided to local food security and supporting vulnerable populations through the Comox Valley Community Foundation. That is being done through our general admin service. Also through that service, information technology resilience for safe work, public engagement, and effective service delivery to the tune of $100,000. Also through 4 of our community fire hall services, rural fire department support for increased preparedness and personal preparedness equipment. For our recreation facilities to offset revenue losses due to the decrease in capacity and increased operational costs for cleaning and staffing to follow public health orders over the course of the pandemic, we've allocated $223,000 through Service 645. And lastly, for rural community hall support, which was just on the agenda previously, for allowing them to reduce virus spread through purchase of things such as non-touch amenities, to the tune of $24,321, and that will be provided also through our administration and general government service. That then leaves a balance of $35,679 of unallocated funds to be retained for emergency events throughout 2021, such as food aggregation and perhaps promoting local food security. Other highlights in the budget also include an increase in electoral area rural community grant service requisitions, or what was formerly grant and aid, by $76,480 between the proposed and recommended financial plans. We've also included conservative 2021 budget projections for the 2 services most heavily impacted by COVID. Firstly, Comox Valley Transit, We're continuing to anticipate decreased ridership and revenues well into 2021. However, this service did benefit from a allocation of $902,000 in targeted BC Safe Restart funding allocations through BC Transit. And for rec complexes, the most difficult service to budget for this year, there are continued uncertainties expected until at least the fall of 2021. The board thus approved a $300,000 requisition increase in 2021, as well as an allocation of $223,000 from the BC Safe Restart funds. In the financial plan, we've also included an allocation of $15,000 per year in both 2021 and 2022 to support the Comox Valley Social Planning Society and the Comox Valley Accessibility Committee. Also, for the two Comox Valley Emergency Program Services, Function 270 and 271, which presently share a single service establishment, a maximum levy increase is currently being sought. However, for 2021, tax requisitions for both services needed to be reduced by $55,600 in order to ensure compliance with the existing total max requisition of $225,000. However, service levels have been maintained and are supported by reserve contributions at this time until discussions on future service deliveries have been completed later on in 2021. And lastly, highlights from some other related but parallel financial planning processes of interest include for the Comox Strathcona Regional Hospital District, a $4.4 million reduction in requisition was approved by the Hospital District Board. And for the North Island 911 Corporation, a new cost apportionment model has been approved and implemented for the next 2 years, which has resulted in some modest cost savings to the CVRD for its apportionment costs, about $63,000 from the proposed to the recommended financial plan in our service 275. So to provide directors with a bit of a sense of next steps, the 2021 revised assessment roll is expected to be received by the week of March the 22nd, so a couple weeks from now. After that, the recommended financial plan will be updated a final time to incorporate the typically minor changes to service participant apportionments resulting from that revised roll. And we will also be including any final adjustments stemming from the completion of the 2020 year-end financial year-end process. After that, we will then ensure rural area tax requisitions are submitted to the province through e-tax, and requisition invoices prepared for the municipalities are done and out prior to the April 10th legislative deadline. We will also be then doing the same for the hospital district, whose deadline is April the 20th. And lastly, the adopted 2021-2025 financial plan will then be posted to the CVRD current budget page by no later than mid-April. And that is the end of my review, and would certainly welcome any questions.
Thanks, Kevin. Are there any questions for staff? Dr. Arbour.
Thanks. I just want to say how proud I am really of the board and staff for this year's budget. To offer a 0.64 average reduction is not easy. I think at the beginning, at the onset of COVID, we all knew the private sector would be affected. And I think we decided as a board to really look at everything in the public sector and realize savings where we could, create efficiencies where we could. We're in the essential service business, so it's not that easy. And when you have a lot of infrastructure projects as well, and the public knows about the increasing cost of labors and material, it's a really hot market right now. I'm really impressed that we're able to deliver a small saving to residents. So yeah, kudos to the board and staff.
Thank you. Next, we have Director Swift.
Thank you, and through the chair to Kevin. Kevin, in the past, you have produced a single sheet for the municipalities listing the services and the cost of each one. Is there a plan to do that this time? It's a really good snapshot for people to have a look at.
Through the chair to Director Swift, yes, there will be. So as part of our adopted financial plan presentation, which again will be posted on the website, we will be reproducing, as I did for the proposed budget, what we call the house tables for each of the directors. But we will also be providing the requisition comparison sheets that will get posted along with the financial plan when we post that in April.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Director Hamir.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll also say kudos to staff. When we were going through the financial planning process, I was expecting like maybe around 1.5% to 2% increase. So I'm astounded that we have actually a slight decrease in our tax requisition, despite the fact that, we are funneling some dollars to I guess, programs and services that we've not really done before, through the direction, obviously, of the board. And so I'm kind of like, oh my God, how did we do this? How did all this money get into the community? And we still were able to save taxpayers some money. And I'm wondering, in the past, we've kind of hesitated about reducing some of the tax requisitions from the hospital board and the waste management board. Do you think that had much to play in the overall financial budget? Like, I'm still astounded. So I don't know if there's an answer to this, how we did this, but if you have one, I'd love to hear it.
Through the chair to the directors, I mean, I don't have a definitive answer, but definitely I think it was a lot of hard work on behalf of our roughly 24 budget managers throughout the organization. So I certainly, extend my thanks to them. It was a long and arduous process. I think we really took this opportunity to really take a hard look at all of our service budgets and the service levels, and certainly did what we could to provide some at least modest relief. Again, certainly some of the granting programs that then did come forward as part of COVID have certainly, worked to our benefit, certainly with the BC Restart money, for example, to be able to put that out to the community in times of need. I think this will, probably provide us a good impetus to on an annual basis, really be looking at our individual services, how we're delivering them, can we deliver them more effectively, more efficiently, and perhaps we'll glean some best practices going forward from this.
Great, thank you. Next, we have Director Hillian.
Thank you, Chair. I'll join my colleagues in applauding all the work that staff have done to produce this financial plan. I think that it's a remarkable job all around. And particularly when you look at the major projects underway and the realities that we've endured through this pandemic, all the more credit to staff for this accomplishment. I'm particularly pleased at the initiatives related to climate action and other aspects that are captured under the regional growth strategy. And it'll be no surprise to my colleagues that I'm very pleased that staff have found a way to include some dollars for social planning and accessibility so that that program area is able to function much more effectively than it has in the past. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions, so I will call on receipt. It's a vote of the full board. Anyone opposed to receipt? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried, and there's a recommendation. Director Arbor and Hamir, and recommendation 1 is to give first, second, and third readings to bylaw number 642, financial plan bylaw. Any further discussion? Vote of the full board. Anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that is carried. Director Grieve and Grant move recommendation 2, which is to give first, second, and third readings to bylaw 651, the Comox Valley Emergency Program Extended Service bylaw. Is there any discussion? Okay, it's a vote of the full board. Is there anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried unanimously. We're on to bylaws and resolutions for first, second, and third reading. First, we have bylaw number 642, the financial plan bylaw. Grant and Hamir, thank you. And that is for first and second reading. Vote of the full board. Anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. Director Grieve, and do I have a second? Director Arbor, for third reading of financial plan bylaw. Vote of the full board. Is there anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. We're on to item 2, which is bylaw number 647, the sewer system conveyance bylaw.
Move first and second reading.
Second.
Thank you, Hillian and Moran. And again, it's a vote of the full board. Anyone opposed to first and second reading? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried.
Third. Second.
Cole Hamilton and Hillian moving third on the sewer system conveyance bylaw. Again, a vote of the full board. Anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that is carried. We're on to item 3, which is bylaw number 648, the Comox Valley Regional District Northern Garbage Collection Service bylaw. Grieve and Hamir. Thank you. Move first and second, and it's a vote of the full board. Anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. Hamir and Grieve moving third. Anyone opposed? That's carried. We're on to item 4, which is bylaw number 649, the Comox Valley Regional District Central Garbage Collection Service bylaw.
First and second.
Second.
Grieve and Moran moving first and second. And it's a vote of the full board. Anyone opposed? That's carried.
Move third.
Grieve and Hamir moving third. Anyone opposed? That is carried. And we're on to item 5, which is bylaw number 650, the Regional District Southern Garbage Collection Service bylaw. Director Arbor move first and second. Can I get a second?
Second.
Director Grant, thank you. And vote of the full board. Anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that is carried. We're on
Move
to,
third reading.
thank you, Director Hillian and Hamir for third reading of the Southern Garbage Collection Service bylaw. Anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that is carried. We're on to item 6, which is bylaw number 651, the Emergency Program Extended Service bylaw. Director Grant and Grieve move first and second reading. It's a vote of the full board. Is anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried.
Second.
Grant and Hillian moving third. Anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that is carried. And we're on to adoptions. Item 7, bylaw number 644 is the Water Supply System Bulk Water Rates bylaw.
Second.
Grant and Hillian. And this is for adoption, and it's the vote of the areas Courtney and Comox. Is there anyone opposed? Oh, we do have a question.
What's my chances of moving this back to first for some revisions? You're supposed to say none. Thank you.
I just had a really confused look on my face. Okay, again, it's for adoption of the Water Supply System Bulk Rates Water Bylaw. Is there anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that is carried.
Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. So we will move to in camera.